Hey everyone, welcome back to another interesting and fun video with JP. We're working on something brand new called prompt painting, and JP is going to walk us through his idea. He put together a document and shared that out on LinkedIn. And prompt painting is a really innovative way of interacting with text that's not a chat dialogue going back and forth, and it eliminates a lot of the copying and pasting, which is part and parcel of working with ChatGPT. So we're going to walk through that. JP's joined me here, and we're remote, so we're doing a screen share. So hopefully this works out. And we're going to do this in a bit of more of a long form than we've done before and post that up onto YouTube. And we'll put some extracts out to share on LinkedIn. And hopefully you find it interesting and useful. And there's going to be a wealth more of these tools that we're coming out with that are fully free and open source to share with the community and to start to get you innovating and working with AI differently in your organization or in your own personal life. So JP, this is great. Thanks for jumping on. And I have on the screen, I'm going to do a screen share so you can see what I'm looking at. But I have up on the screen your prompt painting guide. And maybe if you would, you could walk through some of the concepts there on prompt painting.
Yeah, well, I guess before that, like the way I got to the idea is previous to this, we had created sort of this AI personality generator, and in there we were able to sort of control the tone, the expression, 10 different characteristics of an AI assistant. And so I took that idea and I expanded on it a bit, and I ended up going to say, well, can I start editing a document as if I was an editor and start modifying pieces of the document with that same tone, with the same language, with the same different characteristics that we had worked on in the previous concept. And so I worked out the concept. Basically, what this does is it allows you to do precise editing within the document, where you're going in, you're selecting a piece of the document, and you're giving it instruction. You're giving the AI assistant instructions. So you're saying either expand on this concept, tell me the benefits about this thing. You have a lot more creative flexibility there. If you're doing a story and you want to expand on a specific character, you could just sort of highlight that character in context of the document, and instead of rewriting the entire document, it's just rewriting that specific section in the document. So I found it super useful. I was able to recreate it in ChatGPT with the instructions you see here. But so basically, I just would highlight the text, I'd copy it, I'd paste it, I'd put it in quotes in that particular piece, and I would give it specific direction to change this
Right.
piece within the document. So it did it, and at the same time, if I wanted to see that change within the whole sort of text within the chat GPT, I would say recreate the entire text, and it would put it in context. It would make my changes and put it in context within the entire
Right.
text, which was really, really cool. So then I said, hey, Janak, this is a cool idea. I've never seen it before. Maybe it does exist. But I said, wouldn't it be even cooler if we had a tool that we could do that? Here, what you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing is different scenarios. So, for example, the original text was, this project was successful. So I'd take the prompt, I'd put it in quotes, the project was successful, and I'd give it an extra command. Expand this statement to include key achievements and impacts. And the AI response was, the project was successful, achieving its key milestones within the project timeline, so on and so forth. And it would put it in context of the document itself, which was
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. If you keep going down in the document,
Sure.
if you scroll down a bit there, to the sort of the next change. This is real life example. So I just created a short story, the farm animals and the ogre riddle, and I just wanted to prove out, how with the ogre saying, "Who dares enter my territory?" And it would say, solve my riddle. And I didn't find the riddle was enough
Mm.
ogre-ish. So I said, hey, say this with a strong ogre dialect. And it would change that particular piece with a strong ogre dialect. So I said, if you wish to pass, you must solve me riddle. And I'm sound like a leprechaun now, but you get the idea, right? So you could go through the whole go through the whole document and do some precise editing. If you go down to that next piece, so my idea was, hey, this would be cool if I use the analogy of painting
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a painter. You're adding a brush, you're adding a stroke, you're adding color to your document. I also use the analogy of a director on a movie set. So you're live taking the script and you're providing direction, creative direction to say change this piece, change that piece. So that
Yeah,
was the
that's
concept.
really cool. And just as an aside, it's funny that ChatGPT knows ogre dialect is something that is you don't even need to explain it;
It
it just
does,
knows
yeah.
ogre. Yeah, so the idea is really interesting, and what you touch upon when you described it is where a lot of us spend a lot of time with ChatGPT or Claude or any of the large language models is this copy paste hell situation where we're going in and we're saying do this, do this, do this, and you end up with this massively long transcript, if you will, of all of the chat, and then you're sort of working in a parallel document like Word or PowerPoint or whatever, and you're copying content back and forth and back and
That's
forth.
right.
And then what happens is if you start a new chat or you lose your chat, you can't really go back in because it doesn't have context of the whole document. So then you have to bring in your whole document and then you have to isolate it. And it's such a time productivity sink, if you will, that when we first started, yeah, you get
You
lost
get
and
lost.
it doesn't feel it feels like you're sort of having to prod it down the road like a stubborn like a stubborn cow or whatever. You keep like poking it and it doesn't want to go. And that the
Yeah.
other thing that happens is as your document gets quite long, the chat chews up all of your context length and it starts giving you worse and worse and worse answers because it's trying to optimize on tokens, and the more tokens you're feeding back into it with every prompt, the the more brief the answer
Mm,
it's giving you. And I find that really frustrating. And so sometimes I have to just start a fresh new chat. And certain models like Claude, if you're using the Claude.ai interface, it'll just get to a point and it'll say conversation's over, you've reached your token limit, which is
right.
not acceptable if you're in a productive phase or you're trying to get a product done. So yeah, so I was inspired by the idea. Go ahead.
Um, Well, yeah, just want to add one thing from a so I use this all the time in a
Right,
business perspective now. So this was fun to
right,
do it in a story, but I on a daily basis I create strategies, I create business cases, and sometimes I'm at, let's say, an 80 to
mm,
90%. I like this, but it's either too long and I need to cut down a piece, or I'm doing like some sort of briefing note of some sort, and the message is
right,
not getting through. Like it's really not sounding like my voice, and so I will use prompt painting to edit those. And I will pinpoint a specific area. I always love to add, well, tell me the
right.
benefit of this thing, because it'll just sort of spit out, this is what you should do.
But the why,
But to the end,
yeah,
to the people reading this,
yeah,
they
for
want to
sure.
hear the why, right? So that's another really, really good way that I
Yeah,
use
so
prompt painting.
that's cool. And when we talked at the last video about the sliders, right? Those 10 characteristics, that gives you kind of an idea of tuning it. And when we were bouncing the idea back and forth, and the idea of painting, like the term painting came out, it really, you mentioned like a painter doing brush strokes and adding details and things like that. I guess I went more digital in my mindset where I was thinking Photoshop, right? You've got layers, you've got history,
Yeah,
you've got
right.
brushes, you've got digital tools, and you could probably add on a whole wealth of different like enhancement things. If you think about adjusting levels, contrast, brightness, like RGB, whatever, then you could imagine kind of adjusting instead of like a personality necessarily. Maybe you're just tweaking the temperature, if you will, of the text, and you're making it more friendly, more aggressive, less aggressive. And so I was thinking about it, yeah, like kind of like a Photoshop or a GIMP or one of those other open source alternatives to Photoshop, where even Procreate, like on the iPad, it's getting so advanced now. Like you draw something and then you circle it and then you say animate this, and so that layer starts to get animated, and
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. It's not any way of creating that people ever done before, and you're working really in concert with the tool, which I love.
I'm finding that it's really allowing me
Right.
creative license
Right.
to my documents, and it's giving me tools that I kind of really never had before, just and quick, just add the stuff. When you came up with the Photoshop concept, it blew my mind in the sense that imagine you just highlight the text, and I think we said, you
Yes.
have different filters, the way we have
Right.
filters over pictures, and we have our favorite type of filter, and that filter is actually your tone of voice, and so you highlight that thing and you click on your tone of voice filter, something like
Yeah.
that. That would be
So
kind of
so
fun.
I built a prototype because that's what I like to do. It's how I like to go and express some of these things. So I built a prototype for Prompt Painter. So right there you have that, and I made it. I
Nice.
tried to keep it simple, which simple is hard. And I will say this was one of the most
Great.
involved components I've built in a while. I have built much more complicated components, especially back, when I was doing some of the graph visualization and things like that in a previous project. But this one, it was surprisingly difficult. What I wanted to create was the ability for you to have a long form text document and then essentially break it into segments. And you could do that. Eventually, we'll get to the point where it'll just auto break itself into segments thematically as it's writing. But you can then select any text, and then I wanted it to be like Google Docs, where you're working in when you're doing a document share with somebody else. You are working in one area, and they are working in another area. And I wanted the same experience with AI, where we would have the ability to block out some text, and then you tell the AI to do something, and then you could go off and be in another section editing. It turns out that the AI is so fast that it's actually quite difficult to do that if it's typing above you, because there's so much text growing quickly. But if you have it below you that it can build down, you can literally be typing in your own section while it's typing down below, and you collaborating in real time. And so, yeah, go ahead.
What one of the issues that I was having when I was doing the manual prompt painting is, if I didn't have it rewrite the whole story, and it was just taking the sort of the quoted area, I would have to go back and do some editing afterwards if the sentence before the sentence after didn't
Right.
really kind of make sense. So I'm curious to see. I'm really curious to see how that works in sort of this automated
Sure. Well, I'm going to
fashion.
show you a simple one. It's going to start off with just like 3 words, and then I'll show you how I'm using as a filter the expand filter that we have, and then there's a contract filter which expands and contracts text while keeping the kind of tone. There's a special instructions filter, which is kind of a prompt to let it tweak what you're doing. That's a very early prototype for what we're talking about with the sliders and the personality filters and things like that, but it's enough to get us started. But I'm just going to start with something, and then we're going to go and we'll build a much
Yeah,
more
show me.
interesting use case. And you've got a use case for us as well that we're going to build off of, much more germane to digital
For
technology
sure.
and AI. So I'm just going to start with dogs are cute. So what I have here is you'll see in green, this is a segment. You start with one segment. You can take this text, and you can keep adding to it just like you would a text document. So I like to go for walks with my dog, right? And so that's in the same segment. So all this text is together. You can also just select it and go Control Enter, and now you've broken these into 2 different concepts. And so the AI can work in one concept while you work in another concept. And so now we can break it up into sections. And so this is where you start to be able to delegate to you versus the AI who's working on what. You can take any text, any long form text, and break it into segments. And so if you just put your cursor somewhere and hit Control Enter, it'll break it. So now I've broken this into 3 different segments, I should say. And then, or if you're at the end of a sentence and you go Control Tab, it'll just make a new. If you select text is what I was trying to say. You can actually select a subset of text here, and it will just do whatever is selected. So it's slightly different in the
Oh,
sense
nice.
that it's not a typical way of working with a text editor. But what we have now is in the background. I think I talked a little bit. Oh, I talked to you about this idea of sockets. So these are connections to the large language model. So now that we have 4 segments, there's actually 4 live connections to the AI now. It has 4 conversations spun up, waiting in the background for you to trigger any of these 4 conversations at this point. And the more sections you create, we boot up more AI live connections back to the Nodes API service. And now we're just ready to stream tokens into any of these and think of them as a box now. So I'm just going to start over and go, dogs are cute. And I'm just going to say, okay, that's good enough. I'm going to expand that text. And so inside that box, it's overwriting what I put as a start. And then you can now, it gave me a paragraph. So it took the concept of dogs are cute. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break this up. So I've broken up what it's given me. Now I actually have these 2 parallel chats, and I can expand this further. So now I can be up here editing, and then the dogs are often hailed as a door, but whatever, that's down here being written by the AI. And then, I could take something like the allure of dogs extends beyond the physical attributes to their deep connections, right? So what I could do is I could isolate that. Now I've isolated that out of it, and I could have it expand on that as well. So then it's going into their charm, their appeal. Right in there. So it's actually building that in the document. I've not copied and pasted anything. I've actually not chatted with it at all.
Yep.
I started with an idea, and now I'm working in it. And then I can say, I could put something here, for example, like, but dogs can be dangerous, right? So I could insert an idea, select it, and now expand on that idea as well. So while they're often cherished for their companionship, it's important to know that they have risks, they have instincts and unpredictable behavior. And so it's actually taken that idea that I've inserted into the stream of the document, and it's built that out. And so in a few seconds, just a start prompt and then one minor tweak, we've ended up with a full essay on dogs that's broken into these sections.
So when you did but dogs are dangerous, what I noticed, which I found interesting, is it started the sentence by saying, while dogs are often cherished, and then so it did put it into context of the previous text, which is fascinating. And then, but I'm assuming it hasn't changed the text afterwards, because we didn't continue with that, that one concept back to dogs are cute. But it did take it into context from the previous text.
So what I do in the background is the expand, and then I have contract. I'll show you in a second. There are these pre-built kind of filters, and so what they do is they provide the text that you have selected in green, but it also says, here's the rest of the text, here's the rest of the document for context. So in your response, your answer has to take into the context, but it's not allowed to change what comes before or change what comes after. It's only allowed to change what's in the box. And that way, like, one of the things that frustrates me when I'm working with ChatGPT, especially on something technical or code, any of them, is I'll be working in code and I'll have it build out a component. And then I'll want it to expand this component. And then what it will do is it will strip functionality out of the other functions as it rebuilds it, because it's trying to optimize its token usage, and it's now it thinks I only want this new feature, and it removes features, and it's massively frustrating. This solves that, because if this was a piece of code that I have, I could just say, whatever. I'll just write in here like function, write text, right? And then what I could do is I could say, write me a function here which appends to text strings, right? And so here, then I could actually then take this piece, isolate it, and then have it go and expand that here, right? I'll give it an instruction here, write this in JavaScript with proper comments. So then when I hit expand, it's giving me comments, and now it's going to write that function. It's telling me, it's actually putting the comments there using JS docs comment, which is common commenting library, and then it builds the function, and it gives me example usage, and it gives me a description. And so, I've just been able to embed something, but nothing else has changed. We're still talking dogs above and below, right? And then if I don't like that, I just nuke it.
So Janik, you just introduced sort of this new concept here. So instead of sort of expanding and contracting, you added special instructions.
Let me go back to that.
Tell me a bit about that.
When you are, so I've for now hard coded these filters. So I created a custom filter, the expand filter, and I gave it some instructions that says take what you're given and try to double it. So expand 2x. Don't go beyond. Don't 10x it, and don't give me do 200%. Count the number of words, come up with a good answer that's roughly double. And then the contract does the same thing. And then if special instructions is there, also take into account these special instructions in your task. So if it's blank, there's no special instructions. But if there is something there, like for example, if I said, I could isolate this and I could say, write this as a poem. And now it's actually going to take the special instruction and it's going to overwrite it, and that's the prompt for that piece there. So now I took this, the meaning is the same, and then I could select this, or I could just pick it and say write this academically, right? And then so now it's going to go and rewrite the same thing, but it's going to use the special instruction at that point. So that's kind of your overall filter control there. Now, we can add more of those things as well. That's why I like the sliders and the dials and some of like the heat maps concepts that we were talking about, because then I could like make it more aggressive or more calm or more professional or whatever. When I don't have to type that out every single time, I just drag the professionalism slider, right?
That special instruction is really for me the key, because I'm treating my text as if I'm a movie director now, and I'm directing the text, and I'm saying, give me more here, change this thing. And so as I expand and I use that special instruction, that's going to be super fun to try.
So I just said, write me a script. Just to build this idea, right? So Alice and Bob are in an old farmhouse. They're standing at the edge of an ancient well. Alice and Bob are looking down, and then there's just kind of a dialogue there. And so it's spitting out this dialogue. It's kind of describing this, and then it fades the scene out, right? So here now, what I can do is I can just take Bob, and then I can say, build this out into 1 minute of text. Right? So now I have Bob's thing. Now it's going to take that and it's going to really drill down into it there. Right?
Exactly.
And then if I could have this, if I have that, I can say, make Bob really afraid. Right? So then it just rewrote that based on that piece. And so now Bob's more afraid. And now there's a whole section here. And so you could take any part of it and say, what, like a monster? Make Bob really afraid. So it's done that there, right? So make it a long form question or whatever. And so anyway, made it a little bit longer, not too much longer. So maybe we need to play around with that. But you see, it's working in situ right there in the text. So yeah, that's the special instruction there. So yeah, this is the start of something where you can work on that. And then the last thing, like you just saw me do, is what do you want to accomplish today? That just gets you started, right? So you could paste something in there. But so I mean, what do you think? Is this a game changer from your copy paste game? Or are you going to save your Control-C keys?
It's definitely a game changer for my copy paste. And I'll be honest, when I started this, I was on my phone. I do the 4 a.m. thought, hey, I got a concept. Let me write this down on my phone. I write all the notes directly into ChatGPT now. And when I'm expanding, I'm like selecting the text and putting it out, then recreating the prompt and expanding on this piece and having it rewrite the whole thing. This is live. It's right right in front of you. You're editing. I think this is going to be a game changer for me.
And the
Absolutely.
other thing I didn't show is the contract. So there's a paragraph, and I just selected it, and it's supposed to shrink it in half. So it's supposed to take your paragraph. It's a bit shorter now. And then special
Perfect.
instructions, make
I'm
it
always
bullet
editing
form,
down.
right? So if you wanted that in bullet form, there you go. You have it in bullet format there. And then that's one of the things that, or make it
I'm excited.
sentence form, right? So then you can convert it back to sentence form. That's one of the things that I find, like if I'm looking for example, an executive summary, make an
Yep.
executive summary. Often depending on the language model, like they'll just go hard bullet forms in an executive summary, which you don't usually have more than one set of bullets and
That's
maybe
right.
no more than 3 or 5 bullets in an executive summary, for example. But sometimes it'll write one, it's just all
Yep.
bullets, and that doesn't work. And so if you get into that situation, then you're finding that there, right? Then you can say, well, yeah, you can just override it. You just change the style of it, right? So make this bulleted, and then you're good to go. So
And that's how I got on this thing is every time, in our last video, the reason I started AI personality was because I was kind of like tired of always going back and forth with the AI assistant to say, no, say it in this style, say it in this style. And what was happening is I was just tired of the generic form that
yeah.
I'd always get to. And so what you've just created is going to allow me to really zoom in on the document, do those precision edits. For me, that was to determine a successful outcome if you were able to do that, which you've actually done, which is
So
amazing.
there's in terms of where we go from here, I just wanted to show you. There's a table down below, by the way, that has all of your sections. One of the other things you can do is you can actually disable, you can turn off any sections that you want. So if you don't actually want to see something, and maybe you just wanted to see that one paragraph at the end, or you wanted to just, yeah, turn on and off certain sections, you have the ability to do that. So this is
So cool.
Photoshop inspired as well, where you have the layers, right? But now you've got layers of text, so I could actually turn
Yep.
off different chapters of my manuscript, if you will, and just focus on key things. And so that's kind of cool, and it hides it from the AI as well, so it takes it out of prompt context. So if you want it to ignore this other part of the document and just focus on something, you could turn off that other part of the document, and then the AI doesn't see it, which is kind of cool as well. Uh, yeah.
Janik, one of my styles that I'm working on, I'm probably going to write another blurb on it for in a couple of weeks. But the way I've been prompting, or the style I've been using, is I typically start with a framework. I build out the framework first. Then from the framework, I build out an outline, and then from the outline, I'll zoom in on a point in the outline, and I'll develop that outline,
Right.
that point in the outline. I think what you've just done for me here is you've allowed me, once I create that framework and that outline, and I just sort of run that outline here, I could go nuts on whatever section, using those
Right.
layers that you just mentioned. So I'm excited to try that.
So a couple things that occurred to me when developing this was, first of all, I want to have a history. So let's say that you expand something, describe this step by step, and then what if I don't like this? There's going to be an undo button. I can go all the way back to the original, the original version of it. So if I don't like what the AI says, then I'm not lost anything. I just hit undo on it, which I think is like, again, if Photoshop didn't have an undo, then where would we be? So one of the things
Exactly.
is like, and at certain times, you might have the AI come in and glitch on you, right? It could have a hallucination, or it could misunderstand, and then it could just kind of eradicate your document. So the ability to always step back and recreate it, like one of the things I've noticed is if I say make more aggressive, then so and if I keep doing that, and at a certain point, make more like angry and evil. At a certain time, it'll actually say, I'm no longer comfortable helping you on this topic. And then so yeah, so with the undo, if it actually did glitch or write over, hey, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that, or I don't know, like, like, tell me
Right.
about stores in Ottawa on Albion, right? So uh, actually, it didn't take that into account. It's down its own rabbit hole here. But yeah, if it's not doing what you want it to do, then you can just undo. So I think the undo is going to be a big deal because then you can sort of undo your way back. The other things is the merge, right? So right now we've got all these different layers, if you will, of text. There's a certain point where I just might
Mm,
want to say, hey, I'm happy with this, merge all, and it puts it back into a single document. And
yeah.
now I can go forward and I don't have to be, because right now, like once I've split these are now separate concerns, right? So once I do a
They're all
merge, they go
segmented.
back together and I'm back to my document. So that's another thing. So the undo and the merge and the redo and stuff like that. Those will be some key things as well.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love the merge all.
Yeah. So that's as far as we've taken it. In terms of the concept, I know we started talking about it less than a week ago, since we did the last video. I would say it took me about 16 hours to figure out this whole text splitting and real time, like the socket integration to each of the different components, which is surprisingly long. I thought it was going to
Right.
take me about 2 hours. It took me, yeah, probably around 16 end to end to build the interface and build the filters and build this segment aspect of it. So yeah, it was somewhat complex. I used both. I started with using just Claude to build it initially. Was doing okay, and then I switched to ChatGPT because it kept just making the same mistakes again and again. And I actually got to a point where I got something working, and then I stopped the AI insanity, and I sat there and I rewrote it again in a second copy of it, like in the same project file. And I started bringing in pieces of the logic that worked and pieces that I liked, and I had to significantly rebuild it at a second time. And I reiterated or reused AI throughout to create, to help me work out some interesting features of it. But yeah, I wasn't able to take it end to end using AI. And in fact, I hit a brick wall at a certain
Mm,
point where the AI, it just wasn't cutting it for me anymore. And so yeah, so that was interesting
yeah.
as well because yeah, it would just make continual errors, based on its hallucinations. And the main thing, and it's quite interesting, I referenced it earlier, the main thing that I think this tool is going to help me, the painter, is it kept losing functionality, whereas I wanted to build functionality.
Mm,
And now we have the ability to do that. We can just continue to build out function after function. Now I can actually start writing a function and then have it build it out. And I know there's like, GitHub Copilot and stuff has integrations into VS Code, but now, like, we're trying to make something that's going to boost productivity for all workers, and they're not going to use VS Code. They're not going to use GitHub. So the
right.
ability to take things beyond chat in an infinite number of different document use cases, I think, is super helpful. So that was just some reflections about the build process.
Janik, I think you did a great job. You totally saw the vision where I was going with the concept. You converted it. Thanks for spending so much time on this. I didn't
No,
mean for
not at
that to
all.
happen, but I think what we came out with something unique. I've
No.
not seen this before. I don't know if it's out there. If anybody's seen this before, let us know. But I've not seen it, and if anybody finds this interesting or
Yeah, for
useful,
sure.
let us know as
Okay,
well.
well, let's wrap it up there. I think this was a ton of fun. You and I have probably come up with 10 new features this afternoon, just testing it and playing around with it. And I'd
That's right.
love to see if you set people down and to work this way, if we can break the chat paradigm, because I'm so sick of the chat paradigm as the means of which people understand these things. And, just to reflect on a lot of the narrative that I've been seeing lately through the socials and through news. We're headed into this, we're headed into the trough of disillusionment now on the hype cycle, right? So it was increased hype. We're headed
Right.
into the trough now. People are being like, I don't know how to get good quality out of it. I don't know how to use it. It's not all that's cracked up to be. Where is GPT-5? And so there. But at the same time, though, I'm seeing people who are using the new models like Claude 3.5. They're doing tremendous prototyping directly in Claude artifacts that it would probably take somebody 40 hours to do. They're doing it in less than a minute. And these are like imagine like
Right.
immense data visualizations. Like Ali Miller on LinkedIn, she fed in a document. She fed in like a
saw that.
110-page document, and she made an interactive visualization, data graphs, everything reflecting in the document, and it took like a minute, right?
Saw
So,
that.
so she yeah, exactly.
46
So she's
seconds.
seeing it, but what I'm really fixated on is getting the right tools out to people because I'm not trying to 10x people. I would love to get 10% more productive. Can you imagine that across an organization? 10% more productive off over 1,000 people, 2,000 people. That's
Yeah.
that's a game changer, and then that snowballs, right? That's a compound effect once you start to increase those productivity. So, if getting out of chat, stopping copying and pasting, using tools that are intuitive and to tap into it, like you can radically just rethink how these large language models are being used. And yeah, anyway.
So, so I think in my writing style, I've completely reinvented
Right.
how I prompt and how I approach the AI
Mm.
since I've started. And so I did have that sort of chat back and forth, and that seemed okay, and it was fun to do. But with this prompt painting, it's kind of changed the way I've even approached
Mm-hmm.
writing a document, and I don't know what's happening. It's allowing me to direct more and have
Mm.
more control, and it's really changing the
Mm-hmm.
quality of the
Mm-hmm.
product that I build, which I think there's something there. So I think we need to
Yeah.
continue to
Well,
explore
looking
this.
forward to it. So, for anyone watching, if you have ideas that you'd like to see, let's do this. We're doing this all out in the open, being transparent, showing what we can do with the technology. But it's your good ideas, just like how JP's coming up with ideas. He bounces them to me, I bounce them back. We make a better product through this iteration, and then what we saw in the demo today. There's stuff there that neither of us would have thought of 3 days, 4 days ago when we were developing the concept. Now that you see it, then things become obvious. Oh, an undo button, right?
That's right.
And changing like some like the special instructions. We never thought of, well, how do you actually change something in flight when you're not chatting with it? But your feedback for anybody watching or listening on this is going to be how we innovate as a community and we start to accelerate here on some of these good ideas. So with that, I think we put a pin in it, and
Well said.
I'm going to take some rest, and I'm gonna let you break the tool as much as you possibly can, and we'll see where it goes next. All right, take
Thanks
care.
so much, Janik.